Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts. In today's video, I'm going to expand on the Christmas bauble ornament that I made in the last video, and I'm going to talk you through how you can resize your squares to resize your bauble and make it the diameter you need. The principle of the calculations are that the size of each square, so in this instance, this square is 1/2 inch. If you multiply the size of the square by 2.5, that will give you the diameter of the bauble. In this instance, this bauble should be 1.25 inches. And if I take my ruler, you can see, I'll just tilt this backwards for you. This is 1.25 inches, so 2.5 times the size of the square. This bauble, as an alternative, each square is 3/4 inch, and this should be 1 7/8 inch. And you can see this one comes in at just under 2 inches. So therefore you can work backwards. If, for instance, you wanted to create a bauble which is 5 inches in diameter, each square would need to be 2 inches. And if I show you this bauble here, apologies for the glare, but you can see this is coming in at 5 inches. You then get to the stage where you need to have cardstock large enough for the size you need. If you've watched the last video, you'll know that the bauble is made up of a series of squares, and they are 8 squares across and 5 squares down. And then on the longest side, you need to allow 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch glue tab. In this instance, that means that our cardstock needs to be 16 inches across, plus an allowance for a glue tab, times 10 inches down. So 8 times 2 by 5 times 2. So this has been made out of one sheet of cardstock, albeit it has come from a sheet of A3 cardstock. I thought that I would just go through the measurements, which will show the maximum size bauble you can create from a sheet of A4. I've cut A4 to 11.5 by 6 7/8. I've calculated that the maximum square size you can get on this size of cardstock is 1 3/8 inch. So I'm going to make the bauble on this basis, and I'm going to follow the same construction process as per the previous baubles. I'm going to score at 1 3/8, 2 3/4, 4 1/8, 5.5, 6 7/8, 8 1/4, 9 5/8, and 11. Rotate, and along the short side our score lines are going to be at 1 3/8, 2 3/4, 4 1/8, and 5.5. And that leaves us 1 3/8 for our last square. I'm going to follow the process as per the smaller bauble and fold over and burnish the top and bottom rows. Lay the piece back in the scoreboard with the tab on the left hand side. And we're now going to make a notch halfway in squares 1, 3, 5 and 7. So we need to split this square, which is 1 3/8 in half. So we're going to have to work at 16ths. I'm going to make my first pencil mark at 5 1/16. So the pencil mark is on the tooth which comes down to the left of the 1 1/4 notch. So this is the 1 1/4 inch mark here, and my pencil mark is just to the left of that on the tooth which comes down. So that split that square in half. If you think you might find working in 16ths difficult because it's not for everyone, I'm going to turn the piece around so the tab is on the right and use your ruler to help you rather than the notches on the scoreboard. So we're going to put the notches in the squares that I've marked with a cross. So the first notch is going to be on the second square along. I'm going to line my ruler up with the edge of the score line for square number 2, and I'm going to use my ruler to measure along 5/8 and 1/16. Obviously it is trickier when you're working with 16ths. I'm going to move my ruler along to line it up with the start of square number 4, and use your ruler to measure along 5/8 plus a 16th. So that's in line with the notch which is just to the left of the 5-inch mark. Move along to line my ruler up with the edge of square number 6. Mark at 5 and 1/16. So I'm just to the left of 7.5-inch mark. Again, move along to the last square, line my ruler up with the score line for the square, and measure along at 5/8 plus 1/16. And my last pencil mark is the tooth sticking down to the right of the 10.25-inch mark. So do whichever means you find easiest of working out your 5/8 and 1/16. So we can do the same method here. We know we want our notches to be in the squares which are opposite. So my notch in the next score is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a 16th. Here's my score line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a 16th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a 16th. So our notches at the top are opposite our notches at the bottom. So either use your scoreboard or use your ruler, or move the ruler to where it's convenient for you to do your calculations. We don't need to make life any more difficult for ourselves. Obviously, the easiest solution would be if each of our squares was not 1/8, 3/8, 5/8, 7/8. It would be more helpful if they were squares divisible by 2. So I'm now going to create the bauble in exactly the same way. Cut up each of the tabs, remove the side tabs, add my additional diagonals, fold and burnish the diagonals, secure the piece together, glue the base, and I'm going to glue the top because this is merely a demonstration to show the 2.5 times square, the size of the square, and see whether this has come out the size we anticipate. So there's our finished box. So the squares are 1 and 3/8. I anticipate the box is going to be around 3.5 inches, and you can see that's where it's come in. So just to reconfirm, multiply the size of the square by 2.5, it will give you the diameter of the box. So if you know you want a box a certain size, divide it by 2.5, and that will give you the size you need for the square. 1 and 3/8 is the maximum size you can get from a piece of A4 cardstock. Anything beyond that, you'll either be using A3 cardstock or you'll be adding pieces of cardstock together. And remember, allow for the 8 squares across, 5 squares down and a glue tab. I hope that if you do decide to make the baubles and you want to resize them, this video has been of benefit to you. They're not difficult to put together, and the only issue you come into is, as we've demonstrated with the 1 3/8 inch bauble, you get into using 1/16 of an inch. Let me know if you found this video helpful or not, because if I make these sort of projects in the future where there may be a relatively easy way of calculating or increasing or decreasing the size of the project, I will do these in future where I feel it may be helpful. So that's the end of this video, which, as I say, was just to run along with the Christmas Advent Bauble. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel, and until next time, thanks for watching.